Hello there, and welcome to the Glumberger channel. Today we're doing another episode of Weird Music, the show where we explore weird music that raises an eyebrow or two, but for whatever reason ultimately rewards our attention. And honestly, we've barely scratched the surface of what weird music is out there. There is so much we can explore and so much we're going to explore, so let's just dive right in. Today we're going to be looking at the double album, A Static Place Remain by Stephan Mathieu. This release is a rather interesting one. It's a very experimental drone record that oozes out this spectral, haunting quality across its 2-hour runtime. The release originates back from 2011, where Mathieu released the album A Static Place on Taylor Dupree's record label 12K, and the companion album Remain on Richard Chartier's record label Line Imprint. And according to the Bandcamp page of both of these albums, they were released on the same day, February 1st, 2011. And both of these records used the same experimental approach of gramophones, entropic setup, and processing, whatever that means. And it's done to create these very beautiful, haunting drone passages. This release, however, from 2020, combines both of these albums into a remastered double disc package, resulting in this really dreamlike ethereal drone album. One of the best ones you could actually hope for. It's a phenomenally beautiful album, and finally, both packaged together, very cohesive, very beautiful. So to begin with, we should obviously look at both of these albums separately, starting with A Static Place, because it's the first one mentioned on it. And A Static Place is this somewhat ominous but still very beautiful drone experience. And according to the liner notes on the Bandcamp page, A Static Place is about the journey of sound. Between 1928 and 1932, the earliest recordings of historically informed performances of music from the late Gothic, Renaissance and Baroque era were etched into 78 RPM records. And A Static Place sees Mathieu taking these old recordings, which themselves utilise period instruments like the clavichord, viols, lute and hurdy-gurdy, and then processing them through his unique setup before transforming it by spectral analysis and convolution processing. And for a simpleton like me, these are just words. I don't know exactly what it means. I'm sure some people out there know exactly what's going on here, exactly what he's doing. For me, it seems like he's taking the sounds, repurposing them and turning them into this, like, stretching them, whatever, doing whatever he can. And the result of it all, though, is these incredibly gentle, sweeping drones that carry this immense weight of haunting, ominous beauty. So listening to the record, it's so easy to get lost within the large drones that just so effortlessly drift by. But if you pay close attention to it, it reveals these minute details of those classical instruments that we mentioned, and it sounds like spectres of these initial auditory performances. And thus I can understand exactly what Mathieu is saying when he says that the album's about the journey of sound. You've got the initial instruments from those classic time periods, from the Renaissance era, the Baroque era, etc., etc. Those sounds have been played for hundreds and hundreds of years on these instruments, and then those instruments, those recordings were etched into, those instruments were then etched into recordings in the late 1920s. Those recordings then found their way to Mathieu's collection, and then transformed through this beautiful process into this wonderful album experience. And thus, you've got your incredible journey there from those old time periods to the modern day, and it just sort of makes sense to me a bit. I mean, and also, well, who knows where it'll end up in the future? Like, anything could happen. Like, maybe someone will take these recordings in like 100 years, 200 years, and turn it into something else. Thus, the journey continues. Thus, moving on, it brings us to disc 2 in this collection, the album Remain. So back in 2011, the companion piece to A Static Place was the Line Imprint release of Remain. And here Mathieu takes that same process that he used on a static place, you know, the entropic setup, the what do you call it? No, the entropic convolution processing. And what he does on this one though is he transforms material recorded by Janek Schaffer on his 2008 release of Extended Play, Triptych for the Child Survivors of War and Conflict. A very beautiful morning album, which was also released on Line Imprint, I should mention. And Extended Play saw Schaffer using also a very experimental setup of like gramophones and stuff and whatever. And it was inspired by the Jordiform system of secret musical messages that were broadcast by the BBC World Service during World War II. And on Remain, Mathieu takes that original material, or some original material from Schaffer's Extended Play, reprocesses it through that spectral setup, spectral analysis, convolution process, and what you've got is 1 hour long composition. And it just gently ebbs and flows through its incredibly long runtime, and it's so gentle and it's very comforting, a little bit more comforting than a static place, which has that weird sort of ominous quality to it, but can still comfort you sort of later in the later tracks. But it's very easy to see why they're companion pieces, why both albums are related together and therefore joined together on this one. And so I have to say that packaged together for the first time ever, it makes this an incredibly special album release. The packaging is absolutely lovely. It's not just like typical cardboard. It's so lovely, like the material you use for it. And honestly, not as keen on the new album as the old original releases. However, a lot of Mathieu's solo releases that have been remastered on his own record label, Schwebung, a lot of them have these sort of similar sort of grayscale album arts, and therefore it sort of bridges the gaps in cohesion for that record label. It just makes everything make more sense. So I get it. I get why the album art's now this, and it's not too bad. It's not too bad. And as well, just because we got it here, we can open it up to show this wonderful layout here. Got the inside there as well, which is it's not colourful like the old ones, but it's very pretty in its own right. So, regrettably, getting this release, this double album release, it's now sold out on the Bandcamp, and therefore I do count myself incredibly lucky that I snagged a copy of this before it sold out, because a lot of Mathieu's re-releases do just bam, gone like that. And considering the original releases on 12K and Line Imprints are also really hard to come by these days, unless you're willing to spend a lot of money for a second-hand copy, very lucky that I was able to get this one. Regardless though, the digital versions of these albums are available on Bandcamp. You've got the original forms of A Static Place on the 12K Bandcamp, the original version of Remain on the Line Imprint Bandcamp, and you've got the remastered version on Schwebung Bandcamp. So a lot of versions out there if you do want to check this one out. And thus, yeah, with that one we kind of conclude another episode of Weird Music. Another bit of a weird one, but that's fine. It's weird music, of course. And yeah, drone's always a bit of a weird genre. Not everyone gets it, but for me, it's something I find incredibly rewarding. You can just let it float into the background and you just drift off to it, or you can focus on it with deep listening and find these details that you never noticed before. And I should mention as well that, especially with the second disc Remain, it is such a beautiful track that's so easy to just drift off and let yourself fall asleep to, before you go to bed. It's just so calming, and the movements are so gentle. It just gently rises, gently fades, up, down, it's so good. Regardless though, that finishes our episode of Weird Music today. I do hope you've enjoyed this one, another weird one, but already mentioned this is what the show's about. If you want to, go check these albums out on Bandcamp. Go check out Stephan Mathieu, wonderful composer of experimental drones, some truly beautiful stuff. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you take care, all the best to you, and bye bye for now. Goodbye.